the closer you get to being an expert and knowing what you're talking about in the space, the more people are sounding that alarm, and the more people are saying, we actually really don't know what we're in for. We really don't know whether or not these systems are having any sort of experience. We don't know if we're building something that is more like a tool or more like a new species. It's like, really, you don't know. You don't know whether or not this is going on. And like, this is like, it would be funny if, and it would honestly be like almost too unbelievable for a fiction story if it weren't literally happening right now.
Hey guys.
How's it going?
This is exciting. John, are you comfortable in this position, or do you want to introduce this show? How can we bring you in the best?
I know. I feel the need to talk. Stop talking. Be quiet, John. Yeah,
I know the tables have turned. This is exactly why we wanted to do this.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this. No, I am here and ready for your questions. Thrilled to be here.
So this is obviously our second episode. Hopefully a lot of you have seen our first edition of Am I and are back for more. We decided we wanted to have our fearless leader on to sort of turn the questions on him and give you guys another side of a face you're very familiar with at this point, and then get into some of these questions that we started to broach on the first episode, and get John's opinion on it as well, and talk a little bit about how we got to this point and where we want to take this thing all together. So I think just first of all, let's talk a little bit about the AI Risk Network in general and just how it's been going so far. What is the sentiment that you've been receiving? We have two last laughs, 2 warning shots, 3 warning shots, I think.
3 warning shots, 2 last laughs. Yeah.
It's been pumping out.
It's been pumping out.
Yeah, 1 Am I. Yeah. So what's your take, man? How do you think the sort of unveiling of the AI Risk Network has gone?
I think it's gone really great. It is a big undertaking, right? And have there been moments in the last 3 weeks where I've been like, wow, I really bit off a lot, and now I'm chewing all the things I bit off. But we have an awesome team that we are building. So we have 1 full-time person and like 4 or 5 part-time people working all over the world doing different parts of this organization right now. So it's been really cool just kind of bringing people in and like getting stuff off my plate, because for like a year and a half, I've been doing all this stuff myself. And with all these shows, that's just impossible. So it's been exciting to build the team, get these shows out, get them from like inside my head to onto a screen. Super exciting.
I mean, it's been quite the sprint since we first spoke in early June, late May.
Yeah.
I mean, this was just a baby. It was the first. It was sort of like a little whisper, like, "Hey guys, by the way." It was right after Cam had come on For Humanity. That's how, for some background, that's how we all got linked up. And if anyone out there hasn't seen that episode, it's definitely gone somewhat viral, actually. Last I checked, it was close to 150,000 views, which is fantastic. But please go check that out. It'll give you some more context for where we're coming from as well. But that's how we all got connected with John, and a Zoom call in San Fran has led us here.
Yes, and it was the day I first met Cam was a fateful day in the universe, and I really enjoyed meeting him and was like, wow, this guy's doing some amazing stuff, and it's just been such a pleasure to get to know you guys over the last couple months here.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
likewise.
Same here.
It's been really cool.
Yeah,
I mean, we definitely came in sort of at such an interesting inflection point in where the network was, and like, I mean, yeah, I guess just curious in general, like why did you feel the need when we were sort of at this inflection point to turn For Humanity into a full network, and I'm just also curious to just have you lay out the overall vision of where this is all kind of transitioned, where it's heading, and also I guess where you see the sort of Am I piece of this as fitting into the broader vision of the network. I think it'd be useful for people to get your sense of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what the AI Risk Network is all about, what I've been doing ever since I got into this space a year and a half ago, is just trying to reach out to people in the general public with brief interesting messaging that they will engage with. It has become so apparent to me in the past few months working in this AI safety communications space that 99% of the AI, maybe 100% of the AI risk safety communications world is living in a place where they are very comfortable, which is smart people making communications for other smart people, right? And so it's like this, smart to smart exchange, and it's just staying in this tiny little world. And it's not that not everybody's smart, right? People are smart in all kinds of different ways. Not all of it's academic, intellectual, whatever. If we don't take AI risk to the people at Walmarts in Michigan and Wisconsin and make them care about it, nothing is going to happen. The politicians are not going to pay attention until their constituents demand it. And that means a mass effort of people who don't have time for smart people comms.
One thing going off of that, when I studied philosophy, right, I had the same qualms. I started to read these very, very dense texts that were sort of built off of the shoulders of, the philosophers that came before them. And it was almost like they had their own language and kept people sort of outside the walls. And I found that very, very counterintuitive to the goal of what I believed philosophy was getting after, which is broadening minds, searching for truth, searching for better ways of living. And that can't just be done in these very small circles. So it seems like you're expressing a very similar sentiment as it relates to the AI community. It seems like these people are those same unbelievably intellectual folks that have their own language, that can speak to each other very clearly. And the part where it starts to falter is when that same messaging goes out to a broader audience, and it starts to break down because there's such an advanced language that they understand, but there's no context to it. So how have you found, sort of coming from a journalistic background, how have you merged those skills with now bringing this extremely technical conversation to a larger audience?
It's so funny. So I was a TV news reporter for 12 years, right? And there's a saying in TV news that's basically like, if you can't say it in 5 seconds, it's not worth saying. So, every night in the news, I would go out and do a package, which would be 60 seconds to 90 seconds. I'm live in front of it, beep, beep, blah, 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 on the other side. But before that, you got to do the tease that's coming up next, blah, blah, blah. And it's you really do actually have to say what's in the story in 5 seconds in a way that's going to hook someone into want to, it can't just be dry and lame. It's got to be the story in 5 seconds in a way that's interesting enough to make someone sit through a 2-minute commercial.
So, John, if I were to put you on the spot right now, let's hear the 5-second AI risk version. If you're back on your old news station, how does it go?
Yeah, man, that is putting me on the spot. I appreciate that. So it'd be the tease is for the story is AI risk generally. What's up with AI risk? There's so many ridiculous ways you would do. So in the ridiculous news trick to turn anything into a question, right? You could put anybody's picture up and you can be arsonist, question mark? And it's totally fine as opposed to arsonist, bad. The tease for AI risk would be I would get on it something it's the gravest threat your family faces, and you probably don't know anything about it. Up next.
Ooh,
nice.
Ooh.
Nice.
Just got a flashback, man. To Baltimore, early 2000s,
Yeah. My greatest line about news is I say to people when I would do speaking stuff when I was a news reporter, I'd be you may know me from such films as Ooh, Look, It's Snowing or Who Stabbed My Cousin.
That's great. So sort of off of that, right? What was you've been covering all of these different kinds of stories, right? Cultural moments, specific, very local stories, top to bottom.
Yeah.
When did you first hear about AI? Was it through this journalistic lens, or was it in your personal life? And then how did those two worlds collide?
great question. So I was literally sitting in this office, this is my office here, in the room back there. I was reading the internet, just poking around, and I came across Ellie Iser's Time magazine article, and I sat with it for like 2 hours. I was like, it was only a page, and it was like, our default setting is we're all going to die. We need to change course immediately, or that's what's going to happen. And I was like, oh my God, this can't be right. This can't be right. So then I, looking down the rest of the internet, and I'm seeing him in podcasts, and now I'm like, oh, here's Max Tegmark. Oh, here's Connor Leahy. Oh, they're saying he's right. Oh, here's, Steve Alejandro, and here's Stuart Russell, and there's no one out there who's giving an argument that I can believe to the other side. So like, I'm still looking to disprove Ellie Iser's Time magazine article. If anyone has the proof, please send it to us, all three of us. We'd love to receive that packet immediately. So I basically just started writing a paper for nobody, like a college paper, even though I'm 50, or 40, whatever I was at the time, 49, 48. And like, I just started putting links and quotes and all this stuff into this paper. And it got to be like 25 pages. And I wrote it so it, read nicely. And I sent it to all my friends, and everybody was like, let's talk about something else. What, what, that was neat. Appreciate that. What's going on in football? What's going on in the weather? What's going on in politics? So and then I sent it to some other people, and it didn't hit anybody like it hit me. And I was like, what's happening? Like, I read the thing. I had this really strong reaction. I did this really powerful summary. I'm trying to pass the ball, and every pass is just like brick wall, ball falls to the ground. Brick wall, ball falls to the ground.
So yeah. And I think that you might be the best person to answer this question, which is, what makes a story stick? What is it when you were a newscaster? What stories, would be circulated for months rather than sort of these one-offs? Because a story like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's divorce gets a Netflix documentary and a year of attention. It's like a celebrity divorce. Okay, I mean, yes,
Yeah.
it's a cult of celebrity now. But AI risk seems like merging the most topical thing of this cultural moment with the most potentially dangerous thing to all of humanity. So why do you feel like there is this sort of resistance? Why is it so hard to get people to really tune into this?
This is the question, right? This is our most critical question to solve. If we can thread this needle and get the lock through the key here, we will be in great shape. What is the immediate barrier? The first barrier is everything else that's going on in their life, in their head, in their phone, right? It's like, my phone is on fire. My finances, my personal life, the general world around us, the political world around us. What do you want me to pay attention to? What? So then it's like, past that, no, it is more important than what's in your phone. It is more important than your finances. It is more important than the other thing. I need you to believe that this is what it is. And people just don't want to take that on. People don't want to take that on. I was in a congressional office, and I was saying to a congressional staffer, like, I know you're used to like juggling apples and oranges, and like this, you're just juggling apples and oranges. And what I'm literally doing is taking a flaming basketball and throwing it at you while you're juggling the apples and oranges. And you need to decide, like, I'm either, if I'm going to catch this basketball, some apples and oranges are going to hit the ground, and that's going to be okay. But that's what this is. It's totally different than anything.
Absolutely. I mean, this gets into some of the work that AE Studio is doing too, that where I'm doing some of this consciousness research. Where, like, one thing that we like to talk about a lot is this notion of exponential slope blindness. This idea that people are just not attuned by default to exponential slopes. Without getting into the very messy politics of it. This was like a sort of core failure mode during COVID, where you get 10 people with this unknown disease, and then people are saying, well, why the hell do I have to go into my house and relax? And then, of course, because of these exponential dynamics, despite the fact that humans are by default sort of linear thinkers, and we model trends linearly, we just don't have good intuitions for what happens when these processes just pick up on themselves and spiral out of control. And I think maybe part of the trouble these days, from my perspective, is that this absolutely is a flaming basketball. We're on this sort of exponential curve to, question mark. We have no idea. The people building these systems have no idea where this is all headed. And yet, right now, people, here on the one hand, there are some serious existential risks. This is like nuclear weapons. This is like a pandemic. And yet we're building it. And fundamentally, we don't know how these technologies work. And yet, on the day-to-day basis, people are like, well, wait a second. I'm talking to ChatGPT and maybe sometimes it's too much of a yes man, or I could see how you could use this technology to maybe like make some drugs or make a bomb or something. But John, I'm just not seeing it yet. And I think that might be part of the disconnect where fundamentally there's this, and then there's also the point that I think you're layering on too, which is just people are terrified to think about these questions. No one in the space of, people are busy. They're like you said, the information ecosystem is so saturated right now. People are getting spread so thin informationally. The last thing someone wants to engage in after a long day at work is thinking about how, in the next single digit number of years, we might build a technology that disempowers the entire species. That's not exactly like a chill after work. I want to throw on an episode of my favorite show. I don't want to entertain that. What the hell am I supposed to do about it? Not me, of course, because we are, the small number of people really spending time taking these risks seriously. But, what is this sort of every man supposed to do about this issue? And I think that there are these sort of paralyzing factors that really are challenging for us to communicate about. I'm very curious about sort of how you see tackling these various problems and getting people to clue into the fact that even though, no one's claiming ChatGPT is going to go Terminator tomorrow, that doesn't mean that we don't have these existential risks right around the corner as we scale up these technologies exponentially.
Yeah. So I've talked a little bit on the show, but like my dad was a nuclear arms control negotiator, right? And in the 70s and 80s on like the big treaties and stuff like that. And I think sometimes about imagine if he had to do that job, but there was no Hiroshima, there was no Nagasaki, no one had ever seen a nuclear bomb go off ever. It was just this thing, really bad thing will happen. If you press, hit the button, this really bad thing's going to happen, but nobody's ever experienced it. And then I think about COVID and I'm like, I would not have put a mask on 6 months before if they had said probably like I maybe I would have, but it would have been a really hard thing to be like, your kids are not going to school and you're going to do Zoom school and masks for something that has 0 people in the hospital, is fully hypothetical, and we want you to be warned about, and so we're in this very weird space where how do you get people to pay attention to something they can't touch and feel? I'm also recalling when Gavin Newsom, vetoed SB 1047 in California and was like, I can't stifle the innovation for a hypothetical risk. And it's like, dude, the next earthquake, the next wildfire is a hypothetical risk, but there's still robust planning around it. So this idea that it's hypothetical, but we don't have to plan for it seems insane to me.
It seems like it's an issue of precedence, right? We don't have anything like this that has happened before. Like, sure, we've had incredible advancements in technology, but nothing at this level. The closest thing is the atomic bomb, something that could completely annihilate all life on Earth. That's the only sort of comp that we have. And that's why I think Cam and I are so adamant about talking about this specific angle, meaning the consciousness element, because we see it as a form of precedence. It's not in the sense that we've had walking, talking machines and things and have already dealt with this issue, like not by any means, but we have dealt with it psychologically. We have dealt with it mythologically. We've been telling these stories. We've been sort of playing this out collectively through these Hollywood movies and even going back to something like the Golem of Prague, where we breathe life into dead matter. And what happens? It goes out of control and it starts destroying everything in the town. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Same with Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
we know
the story. Yeah,
exactly. And so that's why I think Cam and I see this as a very clear opportunity. And now, obviously, we've been able to convince you to some extent, because you've given us this opportunity to sort of wave our flag and gallop this Trojan horse into the gates of whatever we are that we're trying to break open, and so that's what I think the core element of this consciousness conversation is establishing that there is a kind of precedent for this, that we do understand intuitively what it means to wake up the machine and the potential consequences that come with that.
Yeah. And these are I think obvious considerations and conversations we need to be having. And I loved how you guys, sort of came to me about it in the first place, right? Because, we've had the conversation, like, we're not trying to make a PETA for AI's situation. It's like, if we can get people to ask the question, is it conscious? That kicks it into the category of it's different than anything we've known. And that kicks it into we need to have this conversation about the extinction risk and the very serious risks, because you now recognize it's totally different than anything you've known. And you're not going to go printing press or whatever the other crap, historical references people will pull out that are just a waste of time and totally inaccurate.
Cam, you have a great way of talking about this. You talk about the point A to point B path. I think that would be very helpful to sort of explain what we're talking about too, along those lines.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's what both of you guys are sort of pointing at as well, or just basically like, fundamentally, we want to, and I think this also goes back to John's first point about, I am one such person who's sort of in this AI alignment little bubble, and I watch, I'm one of the people who's pinging around this sort of like increasingly like strange alien language about these questions and these topics that has been invented in this sort of rationalist circles. And I find that a huge problem with the way this communication is happening, in addition to sort of points about this all being like fairly insular, as John was pointing out, is that there's almost a confusion of the end in and of itself with the means to get to that end. So what I mean by that is we have a goal here. The goal is to get people understanding the nature of these risks, that they are real, that this isn't sci-fi alarmist bullshit, that this is like sober-minded stuff, that all of the experts who are worth their salt in this space, including the people who are building these systems at light speed and the people who are responsible for some of the key technical innovations that have gotten us to this point, are sounding this alarm. I hope at some point maybe we can link the wonderful case public statement about this very thing, that we should be taking these risks seriously, just like we do pandemics, just like we do nuclear weapons. All sort of experts worth their salt in this space have signed on to this statement and are sort of sober-mindedly aware and communicative about this risk. The sort of goal that we have, the point B, as Milo is alluding to, is getting people to understand this, to internalize this, and to realize this. And I think sort of part of the error that has gone on is that people think the only way to get people to that point B is to literally just hammer them over the head with that point in and of itself. We're all going to die. There's an existential risk. This is really scary stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to get out of control. And it's like, I'm not bemoaning this. I think that this is one plausible way of communicating this. It's a very sort of, as you would expect, a sort of rationalist, direct way. They think, if I have come to conclusion X, the way to get people to believe conclusion X is to just state conclusion X over and over and over and over again. And yet, what we've talked about is that this actually has failure modes. It doesn't work. The guy after work doesn't want to go turn on the TV and hear about how he's going to die. That's not exactly like soothing conversation. And so part of what we think is really important about the consciousness conversation is that it will itself lead to this same point B. We're not doing this in some sort of secret way. You are our audience. We're very open about this fact. We think that invoking this question will lead people, as John was just pointing out, to this realization that, oh crap, like we are maybe in over our heads. We have no idea what we're doing. We might be building systems that are awake or alive in the sort of morally relevant sense, that the lights are on. I thought that this was a glorified calculator. I thought that this was lines of code. I thought that this was just a program, a glorified Google search. It's like, no, it's actually not. And it's like the closer you get to being an expert and knowing what you're talking about in the space, the more people are sounding that alarm, and the more people are saying, we actually really don't know what we're in for. We really don't know whether or not these systems are having any sort of experience. We don't know if we're building something that is more like a tool or more like a new species. It's like, really, you don't know. You don't know whether or not this is going on. And like, this is like, it would be funny if, and it would honestly be like almost too unbelievable for a fiction story if it weren't literally happening right now. And so we think the consciousness conversation is really important, bringing up the question of whether or not these systems might be having some experience of their own, because it naturally leads to the same sort of conclusion without just hammering people over the head with the conclusion in and of itself.
Yes. And oh, see, look what's about to happen. I was about to kind of like, I felt like I was getting hostly right there and was about to sort of ask a question to somebody, but I'm not. It's not my turn to talk. I'll be quiet.
No. See, we're trying to understand our own dynamics as well. This is beautiful. We're all sort of in the hot seat. But my question to both of you actually is, you are running around these this labyrinth of the AI space, the AI space that many people don't even have a looking glass into. I mean, the AI risk network is supposed to be a kind of looking glass into this, but how would you guys characterize this sort of array of characters that are at the top of this? Can you give a sort of rundown of who's pulling the strings? Who do you think are the people that are actually pushing for positive change? Who are the people that are just scaling, deploying, and don't really seem to care about the potential catastrophic outcomes that they might be propagating? Can you give the audience a little bit of just a rundown of the characters of this world?
I'll just do a look. Cam, you know a lot more about it than I do. Since April, right, sort of like got parachuted right into the center of the world. And so I'm like the outsider looking around like, wow, like I talked about it for a year and a half, and then I got dropped right in the center of it. And it's been wild. It's been like really, really eye-opening. Not in the best ways. I think that there's very much like the same kind of person it is people of a very similar makeup who are on all sides of this thing. The sort of inner world of it. Say there's a few thousand people we talk about it. Like, what is it? Probably fewer than 5,000 people that are directing and executing this change on 8 billion. And the diversity of that 5,000 in thought is shockingly non-existent from what I have been able to observe. Does that resonate, Cam?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. There are also, like, I kind of imagine a bunch of different concentric circles here of like what sort of how wide a net are we casting and asking this question. There's everybody who works on AI in general or machine learning. There are many researchers spread out across lots of universities and lots of labs. There are the people who are specifically aggressively pushing forward sort of super intelligence sort of agenda, Meta, I think most prominently, and a group I feel most comfortable trashing very publicly on this show because they clearly do not care about the safety implications of what they're doing. They want to get in the race. I think Mr. Zuckerberg is very sore about the fact that he spent all of his time, screwing around in the metaverse while everyone else was pushing forward AI, and he's trying to basically do anything he possibly can to stay relevant and catch up. And of course, that comes at the expense of making sure we're doing this in a safe way. Unfortunately, XAI and the folks who are behind Grok, like, basically do not care about safety. They've hired, I think, a single person to begin doing this sort of safety work. This is actually someone that I've interfaced with fairly recently. Well-meaning guy. These are not evil people. It's like the incentive structures are just not set up for alignment work to be taken seriously and to succeed in many of these labs. OpenAI, their sort of safety team has fled in droves over the last couple of years. There's a wonderful term that's sort of emerged in the alignment space called safety washing, which I think is like really important to throw into this conversation, which is the idea of, look, we've hired a whole team of alignment researchers to do this work, but it's like, actually, they have no sway. They don't get to do anything. When they make recommendations, you ignore them, and then they all get burned out in 18 months and leave. And also, though, to OpenAI's credit, they did, I think, change this. They also had to sign all this crazy stuff that says they can't even talk about any of what's going on internally or any of the gripes or qualms that they had. So I think OpenAI gets like a very low, grade on their alignment report card as well. And I think best of all is Anthropic right now. Anthropic does take these concerns seriously. They are like fairly significantly funding alignment work. The sort of core problematic piece that's just, again, and the folks at Anthropic are not evil people by any means, and almost certainly they are the least evil people in this space. But by virtue of the fact that they are trying to stay in the race with all of these folks, it just sort of constrains the incentives that they have and that they have to operate under. And so I do think that there's a reasonable critique of what Anthropic is doing, of sort of talking out of both sides of their mouth, where they really are doing the alignment work, and they're probably the only lab actually doing this work and taking it seriously, and they deserve major credit for that. But at the same time, they're pushing forward these frontier models as well, and these frontier models have very similar failure modes across the major labs. And so I would prefer a world where like a pretty good player is in a space with otherwise like fairly sociopathic players. And so I'm glad Anthropic exists in that sense, but it's not like at the global level, them continuing to also push forward this technology in the absence of fundamental understandings of how it works, or whether or not we're going to be safe in the long term, is like some like awesome thing in and of itself. And so, quite selfishly, I feel most proud and confident of groups like AE Studio, or the place where I do this work, where we are not a frontier lab. We are not pushing forward superintelligence. We are not attempting to build superintelligence. We are redirecting profits from the consulting arm of the business purely into alignment and safety research, and increasingly sort of the consciousness work that I and a few others are doing. I think that like this is a great thing to do. I think many more organizations should be doing this sort of thing. And then finally, just to sort of tie the bow on this point of like, what is the lay of the land in this space? The sort of innermost concentric circle are these alignment style people, the people actually doing the safety work and the alignment work. I think it's great that they exist. I think by and large, they're doing a good job and they're pushing forward research. But again, there are these sort of strange incentives, and I often find myself somewhat frustrated by the way that the alignment community in general operates and pushes forward work. Again, very insular. Like the only people worth communicating to are, the 10 other smartest alignment researchers and nobody else. I think, thank God for the AI Risk Network for filling that space and for allowing us to come on and talk to everybody about these things. Everyone deserves to understand what's going on here and should be a part of this conversation. And I also think that, again, no one besides maybe, some of the sociopaths leading like the really crazy labs that don't give a fuck. I hope I can swear on this podcast that don't give a damn about the safety stuff.
It's your podcast, Cam.
Sweet, cool. All right, well, we've established that norm. Moving on. The alignment people are also, I think, a little afraid, to be honest. Like it's like it feels like weird stuff. It's like you're spending all your time worrying about a threat that, again, hasn't fully materialized at this moment in history. These are really smart technical people. They could be doing a lot of really cool things and getting paid oodles of money and having like more normal reputations, doing more normal research. Like there's a little bit of this sort of pitter-pattering around the edge of actually tackling the core alignment question, doing things like mechanistic interpretability, this sort of neuroscience for AI, which is nice to have, but won't itself solve the problem. Neil Nanda, who's I think like the sort of 8,000-pound gorilla in this space, just absolute genius, has himself said, I don't think that mechanistic interpretability is itself going to solve this problem. Don't put all your eggs in this basket. Evals, which are basically just like tests to see how well these systems are aligned or not aligned. They're nice to have. Glad people are doing that. Not going to solve the underlying problem. And so people are sort of stuck doing these things that seem nice, that like a normal person can understand and say, okay, cool. Yeah, evals for AI. I see why you're doing that. And yet the actual core alignment problem, trying to build out these systems in a way that it will go well in the best term and not kill everybody in the absolute most basic case. This is a problem that vanishingly few people are actually working on or putting their money where their mouth is or actually doing sort of meaningful full-time technical work on. And, that is a bit of an indictment of the alignment folks. Like do the real work, open philanthropy, fund the real work. They are starting to move in this direction. And I think that that's great that they are. But like, we're pretending like, again, this goes back to the exponential slope blindness. We don't have 10 or 20 or 50 years on the clock here. Like we have to be doing this work right now, taking it seriously, not caring that some people are going to say, whoa, this is all so weird and strange. People need to kind of put their money where their mouth is and be brave and actually do what needs to actually be done.
But Cam, this is what infuriates me about this entire problem, because it seems like we've worked ourselves into we've dug our own ditch, obviously, and like this is what we do constantly in our society and as a species, as a whole. I was talking to my friend the other day about this specific thing, and I said, if aliens came down, and we've told this story plenty of times too, there's a couple responses to it. There's immediately start shooting, which is one response, right? Just blow it up if you can. If those aliens are more powerful than you, that's not going to go well. There's some sort of form of diplomacy, right? Where it's okay, let's do a sort of standoff and send our representatives and sort of suss you out and that sort of a thing. And then there's the okay, well, when it's a cold war of an alien sort of invasion, right? If it's they're just sort of sitting there like the arrival pods, and they're not doing anything, but they're just there. And we don't know exactly what's about to happen. It seems to me like the logical thing to do would be to collect a group, a very diverse group of all the sort of resources we have, all the resources of mind that we have, philosophers, psychologists, neuroscientists, machine learning experts, religious figures, like everything. Why not throw everything at this problem and get everyone in a room and have a discussion about this before we deploy, before we scale, when we actually have the possibility as an actuality, right? This is something that we are building right now. Again, this might be naive, and this might be, hindsight is 2020. But once we had that first warning shot, right? Just a little plug right there. Once we had that first shot, and we knew that this was coming, it really, really makes me sad that we weren't, as a species, able, the wise ape, supposedly, that we weren't able to come together and throw all of our wisdom at this thing. And I think that this is just another instance of our intellect running wild, where our wisdom is completely muzzled. And I think that will be potentially the undoing of our species.
Like, people are so damn people-y. It's the worst thing. People are the worst. Like, they'd be like, okay, great. We're going to have a meeting of the 1,000 most important people to come to the room to talk about what to do with the aliens. Person one, do you want to come? Well, who else is coming? Well,
yeah.
What time is it at? Where's it at? I don't know. What are we eating? What, like we couldn't even get the damn people in the room. We couldn't do it. We'd get some people in some room.
And now we're scrambling. Now we're scrambling with what we're doing right now and the alignment work and things like that. And that's why I get what you're saying, Cam, where it's like Anthropic. I love Anthropic. I use Claude all the time. As far as I can tell, they seem like they are trying to do some balanced work within this space. Their last model card was fantastic. Like, they are putting forward work that is very interesting, but at the same time, everything's scaling. Everything's being just better. ChatGPT 5 is going to be smarter than you are. All this stuff, and it's all it is an 8-second reel on YouTube. And that's what scares me so much, is we don't get to go, once we pass a certain threshold, there's no going back. And I just don't know where that threshold is. I mean, John, you can talk a little bit more about the 91 weeks if you because I don't know if I could explain that as well as you could, but do you want to sort of go down that route?
Sure. I mean, sure, we could talk about it a little bit. Sure. A lot of important people in the field believe we have less than 2 years to make a meaningful difference. At Center for AI Safety, there was a 100-week clock started 10 weeks ago, and we're on week 90, and viewing it as 90 weeks to make a meaningful difference. And, that is terrifying and also super important. Like, we can't look away from that. That's why, the whole approach to this can't be like in a doctor's office, like where it's like, oh, you appear sick. Go see this specialist and then this specialist, and we'll put you on a 6-week course of this. And if that doesn't work, you'll come back and we'll try this. Like, no, this is a patient in the emergency room on the table, bleeding out, going to die. We just try stuff. You have an idea, try it. You have an idea, try it. Try it. Like, we're not at the moment of finding the perfect thing. We just got to find things, throw them at the problem, and see if something can work.
Cam, in your experience, right, as you start to talk to more and more people that are in this world that are attacking these problems from a bunch of different angles, right? What gives you the most hope? Who do you think is doing the most important work? Where do you see a path towards something that actually could maybe mitigate these risks?
Is that a question for me? Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out.
Yeah.
Can we just
Can you hear us?
I'm
repeat it?
hoping you
Yeah,
have an
yeah.
answer. I'm hoping you have a
Yeah.
great answer to this question.
Sorry.
I'm on the edge of my chair.
The
I'm like,
silence was worrying.
Cam, save us.
Son of a bitch. But maybe would you mind just repeating the question, Milo? So I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
hear
yeah.
the
What
whole
I
thing?
was saying was, because we were talking about this 91-week deadline to make an actual difference. You, on a daily basis, are talking to people that are approaching these risks from all different angles, right? And at the very, very tippy top of the spear. Who is doing work that you actually think is worthwhile? Who do you see a path forward in these 90 weeks, or do you think we are just kind of hurtling towards a collective doom? I sure hope that there's someone out there, and I know you're doing this work as well. But are there other people? Do you feel a wave? Is there any sort of momentum?
Yeah. So a couple things to say here. First, yes, I do think that there are people who are doing good work here. Again, I do believe AE Studios' sort of approach. We call this sort of neglected approaches to alignment, where we just want multiple shots on goal, giant sort of portfolio of possible research approaches to take here. Basically, throw a lot of shit at the wall, see what sticks, iterate very rapidly on things that might actually help solve the underlying problem. I think, given the sort of time-bound nature of the problem at this point, if you really take John's 90 weeks seriously, that's the sort of methodology that I think is going to work. There are a few promising signals, actually, in the last couple of months that do give me some hope. One of the most important ones is the fact that the President of the United States just put in his AI action plan, the administration gets 3 pages to decide what they want to say about the most transformative technology in human history. And they devoted about half of a page to that, to these questions of interpretability, controllability, robustness, which is just like political watered down language to talk about AI alignment and about the fact that we fundamentally do not understand how these systems work and that we need to invest right now in serious AI R&D to better understand this. Very pleased sort of on AE's side that we wrote a couple of op-eds in the Wall Street Journal that were very similar along these lines. We spoke with a few of the key architects behind the AI action plan, and we were very pleasantly surprised to see this in the plan. And I do think, all politics aside, this is a nonpartisan issue, and the president and the administration deserve serious credit for putting this in the AI action plan. Now, they need to actually follow through on this and not safety wash, right? Now, it can't just be talk. We need to invest hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in actually solving this problem, just like we would for the Manhattan Project back in the mid 20th century. This is our generation's moment to do this right. We got one chance. We need to get the initial conditions of this technology right. By default, we are not poised to do that. We can do that if we get our act together and I think do this work in a serious way. I do think like folks at Anthropic and at other labs are moving directionally sort of towards this, but I think the research needs to be ambitious. It needs to be unapologetic in its scope, and we need to throw everything we have at this problem, just like we did during the nuclear arms race. I think that the stakes are actually quite similar. So that's what gives me hope. And then maybe one other comment I wanted to make off of what John had just said, this sort of really nice doctor's office versus emergency room visit, is like, just to take a step back for a second, like, I am a researcher. The sort of normal thing for people like me to do is to be very quiet and careful about the way we communicate and write a bunch of papers that are going to get read by 25 people and then put them in a journal or go to a conference where you're just like in the room with a bunch of experts and, everyone claps and then, you can put your paper out and people cite it and that sort of thing. I intend to do work through that normal route and continue working at that pace. But what John said deeply resonates with me. This is an emergency room situation. There might be some researchers who think, well, this kid's getting on a podcast and talking about this stuff and everything needs to be peer reviewed before you say anything to anyone. And I would say, you know what? Under normal circumstances, doing normal research in a normal historical time, fair, great point. Right now, no. Absolutely not. We need to be talking about these things. We need to put our money where our mouth is. If we think that this actually is the magnitude of risk that all the smartest people in AI think it is, then we need to be communicating about it in a candid and honest and direct way. I think that that's especially true for the consciousness question, but it's generally true for all of the alignment work. And sort of part of my own sort of putting my money where my mouth is doing this podcast with you guys, bringing people on, talking about these conversations, being unapologetic about this, and yeah, like bringing through this conversation. Maybe one last thing to say while I'm on this monologue is what Milo, you had said about this sort of arrival kind of situation. I really do think, and I don't want to be self-aggrandizing or toot our own horns too much here, but like the AI Risk Network might be the best that we have for doing something like this, where we can bring in people in this space, talk to them, and share those conversations with a giant audience, and continue to do this as the platform grows, and sort of bring the entire world into this conversation in this way. I don't see of a better alternative right now. I don't know how this sort of thing is going to happen. There are meetings of AI alignment researchers. I go to those meetings. They're great, but again, it's this sort of tepid, piecemeal, linear, step-by-step sort of methodical research approach style. And that is good. I'm not saying throw that out and just like everyone starts screaming at each other instead of doing like really good scientific norms that we've established. But we can't pretend like this is business as usual. That's all I'm trying to say. And I applaud the AI Risk Network for bringing this conversation to a wider audience and bringing people into the fold who otherwise might not be, because we do need to be talking about these things. If this is all real, and it definitely is, we need to take that seriously, and we need to have these conversations, and we need to figure out what the hell to do with the aliens before the aliens start, putting us in a seriously dystopian sci-fi sort of future. We're already in sci-fi land. There is an alien in your pocket, as us three have delighted in sharing that meme with each other. Now everyone else needs to know that. We need to take that seriously.
Yeah, and I appreciate all the plugs for the network. I'm going to now reverse plug the podcast if I can for just a second. So, when we first met, Cam, you guys were thinking about making a documentary, and I think it's important to point this out that like we had a couple of weeks of conversation, the three of us, about sort of like what is the best place for you to take the research you're doing and the urgency of it to get it out to the public. And you guys kind of, I said, what about if it was a podcast? And you guys went back and thought about it for a little while and were like, a documentary where you're working on something 6 months, a year in advance, and your feet are in cement and you just can't sort of move with the speed that this thing is moving at. And so you guys were like, I was so pleased when you were like, yes, we want to do the podcast because the pace of the podcast will allow us to engage with the public in the way we need to, not in this sort of like, here's a whole big thing and then we go away, and here's a whole big thing and then we go away.
To that point, right? It's throw everything at the wall, like what you were saying before. It's just we got to shotgun spray everything we can. Like we didn't pivot from the documentary and go it's like no, we're doing the documentary, we're doing the podcast, we're doing everything we can. I mean, that's the state that we're in. An emergency room is like all hands on deck. You gotta just start. I mean, I personally. And again, John, you and I have talked at length about this, sort of the frustration of the experts. You sounding the alarm and then just retreating into their turtle shells and being like, kind of acting business as usual, but speaking as if it is nothing even close to that. Whereas you left your complete life. You went in a completely different direction. Now you're doing this. I quit my job. I left everything behind because I believed people like Cam, because I believed people like Eliezer. Like this was not just, sort of a fad. If this is an actual threat, if this is the threat of this moment, then we should all be dropping what we're doing in a certain, obviously, everyone needs to work. Obviously, everyone needs to still live life and enjoy the existence that we're so lucky to get to experience. But part of that is doing everything you can to make sure that experience can go in the right direction, that more people can enjoy a sort of better form of life. And the basic form of that is making sure life continues. And we're facing a threat that may actually, shake the foundations of that core thing of just us being here alive together.
Yeah. And this is something, Cam, I'm interested in your thoughts on this, about how people working on AI capabilities development feel about this, but I just feel such an overwhelming sense of indebtedness to the people who came before us. And that like the fact that our generation would drop this ball, that we would be the last humans by decisions we are choosing to make. This is not an alien coming from outer space. We're building the alien by choice. It seems unthinkably disrespectful to everyone who lived before us on this planet and sacrificed to get us everything we have.
100%. I mean, I definitely agree with this. And to me, and this, might be one place where we respectfully have like almost slightly different takes, where we obviously have the exact same goal here. But for my like, I take a very sort of brutally pragmatic view of these risks and of where we are right now, what I like to think of as the state of the board. We're in this like a giant, extremely complex game. I don't want to say game in a trivializing way, but just to kind of go with the analogy. And we're now in a world where I do believe the cat is out of the bag. These technologies are not disappearing. They're not going away. They're incredibly economically valuable. And to be clear also, you know, for whatever cognitive dissonance it causes in me and others, I'm a power user of these technologies. I derive tremendous professional and personal value from using these tools. I don't want to put that away. You know, I wouldn't be happy to live in a world where you know, it's now been almost 3 years that I've adapted my life to this. And I think my agency as an individual and the extent to which I can make a positive impact has been dramatically amplified by this technology. And so for me, and you know, other people might respectfully have different positions on this, and I respect those differences. But like for me, I think the sort of notion of, you know, shutting the whole thing down or putting the whole thing away is increasingly far-fetched. I hope, honestly, that something like this happens and people slow down and think, okay, wait a second, you know, what are we really doing here? You know, let's take a breather and maybe take a step back and think about all of this. I welcome that with open arms. But for me, the core thing is we need to build this thing out in the right way. And that is where I think it's that in the right way. It's doing this. It's not just doing it. If we want to respect the entire sort of human trajectory and everything that's come before us and the giants whose shoulders we're building all of this technology on, it means doing it in a way that is respectful to not just our past, but our future trajectory, and not just willy-nilly cutting corners to build the God machine and we accidentally build like an alien vengeful God. It's like, this is not the way to do it. We've talked very honestly about how the consciousness question is probably related to this. We certainly don't want to build systems who rationally deduce that because we have been like alien factory farming, torturing them because no one bothered to ask these questions, it's actually rational for them to view humanity as a threat. It's like, no, let's avoid that. That's all part of building this out in the right way. It's the trajectory is going to continue, and my sort of call to action and what I think that, you know, pragmatic alignment and safety oriented people should be working on is not necessarily, you know, trying to put out the fire, but direct the fire in a way that is productive and constructive and brings joy and brings value to people's lives, rather than some sort of opaque alien system that right under the surface you get these like absolutely strange and bizarre and emergent and somewhat and sometimes horrifying behaviors and outputs that are only going to get scaled up as we integrate these things more and more into our lives and into our societies. These are real big decisions. This is great power, and what I advocate for and what I think everyone should be advocating for is great responsibility to scale with that great power. Not just looking at quarterly profits, not just looking at, oh my God, this thing really writes code and we used to pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that, and now the machine does it. Like, isn't that amazing? It's like, yeah, but like there's a reason it's so powerful. It's only going to get more powerful, and we need to make sure that we are stewarding and harnessing that power in a responsible way. And we need to have adults in the room. And I do believe if there are adults in the room, if there are people doing this fundamental work, we're not all going to die. We're going to lead ourselves and our kids and their kids into a wonderful future. But that is not to be taken for granted. We are at an insane inflection point, and we better make the right choices, as John says, in the next 90 weeks. So just that's sort of where I'm coming from when I think about these things, what gives me hope, and also the sort of obligations that we have, not only to our incredible past, but to an amazing future that might still lay before us.
And if I can just like, Cam, it's really helpful, I think, for the audience to hear that, like, you are in the room, you are doing this research. You know, literally, like, you know, a lot of the audience may not know this, but like Cam is traveling all over the country and all over the world on a daily and weekly basis, meeting with very important people, talking about these very important topics. And so you in the center of the circle are saying you are fully hopeful and believe that these technical things are achievable.
Absolutely.
I mean, and when Cam says something like Meta does not care at all about alignment, he's saying that from a perspective of working for Meta. Like, he has been in the belly of the beast in a wide array of positions, roles, and conversations. And again, just to sort of plug this podcast and to sort of pat my good buddy on the back, this is not a really wise move as a career researcher scientist. Like, it's
No.
not, it hasn't been full career suicide yet because he's doing it in the right ways. And, there are a lot of people. And again, this is why we want to have a platform like this, and why we do want to communicate about these things in the right way, because Cam and I constantly are talking about this space is about to become very on the tip of the tongue of our cultural sort of dialogue. It's right around the corner. I know it for a fact. Everyone in the space is talking about it, and you're starting to see the simmer of this, rising to the surface. Now, the problem is going to be that when we get those 15 seconds of fame, meaning this conversation of AI consciousness, AI alignment, like it is building, but especially the AI consciousness conversation, it will 100% get bulldozed by sort of half schizophrenic, like on the outskirts of sanity type of people that think they've woken up their chat bot and things like that, and they're in their basement toying around with these things, and oh my god, they figured it out, ChatGPT is alive. Or we're going to get an OpenAI released letter that's like, no, we've looked into it, and no, they're not. Like, that's going to be sort of the public messaging. So I think that I give you, Cam, a lot of respect, and John for giving him the platform to talk about these things in a very level-headed and from a place of science and research.
Well, I appreciate that from both of you guys, and I do think like it in this case takes three to tango here, and I respect and appreciate how much we can synergize in our shared goal and try to push this stuff forward. There's some quote about there are people often think asymmetrically about the risks of doing a particular thing and often fail to think about the risks of not doing a particular thing. And that's sort of the approach that I have here, in spite of this sort of like 40% joke about like career suicide of doing this sort of thing as a researcher. It's like, what's the risk of not doing this? What's the risk of just doing what everyone else is doing and staying very quiet and very diplomatic, and well, what's going to happen? And I will also say a huge amount of credit goes to AE Studio, who is my employer, who does not care about what I say. I think that I've earned their trust, but they also operate from this sort of like, we're funding alignment research because we're a bootstrap business. We don't report to anybody. We think this is a critically important issue, not only to do research about, but to communicate in a sober way about. And, instead of me having to clear every sentence with the, AE comms department, they happily sort of shoo me out and are excited about this work. And so credit goes to them too for setting up those sorts of incentives where I'm not like fearing for my job to go talk about these things. So yeah,
really
huge. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So as we start to wrap up, right, John, I'm gonna again turn the tables, because you end for humanity in a really nice way of sort of on this last note of hope. And I asked Cam earlier what made him hopeful, but you have almost just as many, if not more, conversations, especially in this sort of framework, And so I want to end our podcast with you asking you what makes you hopeful as we go forward into these next 90 weeks.
Man, I ask that question all the time. I don't get asked that question. I don't answer it a lot. So I am hopeful. You guys make me hopeful, right? Like people like you, like young people who have answered the call and are putting their hands up and saying, like Milo, you saying I'll drop my whole life and just jump into this thing. And Cam, you taking these professional risks and just, doing this brave communications work. We need an army of us, right? It's like tag, you're it. We just need to tag everybody. And like the polling is like 80%. What issue in America is 80% of the people agree on? Everybody agrees we shouldn't build an AI smarter than a human. Like this is pretty obvious, and everybody agrees on it. So I'm hopeful that we can somehow take this clear awareness in the public, couple it with communication that leads to action, and we can get the politicians to pay attention. It's to me, it's like a 3-part reaction. Public gets activated, politicians get activated, regulations get made, change happens. And like that's where the hope is. And that's pretty concrete. right? It's not like some like I'm hoping. It's like, no, I want step 1, step 2, step 3, repeat, stack them up. And I think we can get there. Something else that makes me hopeful is like, I think one of the hardest things for people when they consider this is like, how could I look over the edge of this cliff that like it's not just there's no tomorrow, there's no tomorrows, right? Like I die, there's no tomorrow for me. That I can stomach. Okay. No tomorrows for anybody is an idea that is really hard for people to like absorb and continue on. And yet, look at the three of us, look at the people who come on this network. It is possible to lead a positive, productive life while doing this work. And so that makes me hopeful too. I was actually walking around my backyard yesterday. It was a beautiful day in Baltimore, like 82 degrees summer day. And I was just appreciating the trees and the weather and nature and everything. And I was reflecting on how I am more present. I am more appreciative. I am more grateful of everything in my life since I came to terms with AI risk. Like I don't have a lot of expectation for the future, which allows me to really appreciate today and put my emphasis in today. And so, I am just all in today. I'll be working on my computer till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Something in my body will be like, you must go to sleep. I'll go to sleep for 6 or 7 hours and I'll get right back down there and just start it all over again. 7 days in a row, 7 days in a row, 7 days in a row, and see where it gets us.
I think nothing else needs to be said. Thanks so much for coming on, John. And I'm very excited to keep our podcast rolling and keep growing this network with you, man.
Awesome. Thank you guys for doing what you're doing.
Of course.
Thank you, sir.